Next in the broadcast, Korea's new safety ministry, born out of last year's ferry disaster, says enhancing public safety will be paramount in upcoming reform efforts, while the country's justice officials say they will strengthen law and order. Authorities on the search for a Korean man in Turkey say he may now be in Syria on his own accord. The missing teen is suspected of joining the Islamic State militant group. And U.S. President Barack Obama, in his annual State of the Union speech, calls on Congress to join him in enacting a middle-class economics policy while challenging his fellow statesmen to end political bickering. Primetime News begins now. Welcome to the program. You're tuned in to Primetime News, live from Seoul. I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang Tae-ri. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We begin over at the nation's top office. Beefing up safety measures topped the agenda at a meeting of some 8 government bodies today.
In the spotlight was the country's new safety minister who promised to create a safer society for all Koreans. Choi Yoo-sun starts us off.
The head of the new safety ministry, established in the aftermath of last year's deadly ferry accident, has vowed to ensure a fast response to major crises in the nation. A special rescue team will be formed to reach an accident or disaster site anywhere in the country within 30 minutes on land and an hour by sea. A lax response to the sinking of the Sewol-ho ferry last April was largely blamed for the deaths of more than 300 passengers. Safety Minister Park In-young said he will bolster the ministry's fire service and Coast Guard rescue operations and hold more public servants accountable for laxity. Inspections of public facilities will be carried out annually, and safety education will be offered to all Koreans, from toddlers to the elderly. The safety minister also talked about turning a problem into an opportunity by expanding the use of information and communications technology in safety management and creating jobs in new areas such as safety consulting and monitoring. Saying that government reform is the very beginning of all reforms, the administration minister said he will integrate overlapping public projects and services to more efficiently cater to the needs of the public. Public servants will be encouraged to initiate and innovate through incentives, and those involved in corruption will face dire consequences.
We plan to expand bonuses for good performance for the salaried positions. It's a step towards implementing a performance-based system in public service.
And to encourage greater specialization in public service, government employees will be limited to the number of times they can be transferred from one ministry to another, and more positions will be open to experts from the private sector. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, the country's law enforcement officials also took part in that meeting. They said they will do all they can to root out social crimes, especially in the wake of some horrifying cases of child abuse seen in the past few weeks. Park Ji-won with this report.
Korea's Ministry of Justice has stressed that a firm legal foundation has to underpin the government's plans for structural reform. Laying of his ministry's plans for 2015 to President Park Geun-hye on Wednesday, Justice Minister Hwang Kyo-wan focused on ways to re-establish law and order, build a law-abiding society, and eradicate deep-rooted crimes. The ministry says the protection of Korea's constitutional values are at the core of attempts to maintain and strengthen law and order. It says pro-North Korean campaigns and illegal protests will be subject to stricter crackdowns. The Justice Ministry will also strengthen legal education for young people and ordinary citizens in conjunction with the Education Ministry to foster a more law-abiding society. The ministry will also focus on crime prevention. A top priority is tackling child abuse, a reflection of the public's fury over recent child abuse cases. The government plans to inspect every daycare center and build a stronger network with the police to swiftly respond to abuse cases. Sex crimes, as well as domestic and school violence, and crimes related to the unsanitary management of food are other areas the ministry has vowed to stamp out. The government also aims to increase support for the victims of crime. The government is also going to strengthen its pro bono legal services in a joint effort with Korea Legal Aid Corporation. The Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission of Korea stresses that rooting out corruption and raising the level of social trust is key to achieving the government's lofty goals. It vowed a swift passage of comprehensive anti-corruption bill that's currently pending at the National Assembly. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has given a positive response to Russian President Vladimir Putin's invitation to visit Moscow this spring. That's according to Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov during an annual news conference on Wednesday. Lavrov said around 20 heads of state, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, confirmed their attendance for the country's World War II Victory Day celebrations on May 9th. If Kim accepts the invitation, it will be his first trip abroad since coming to power in 2011 and mark the first time a North Korean leader has not chosen China as his first overseas destination. And staying with North Korea, it wants to talk, and this time with the United States. Although the North showed a desire for dialogue with the U.S. earlier this month, this time North Korea seems quite determined to get those talks going. Hwang Sung-hee tells us more.
North Korea has reiterated its readiness to mend fences with the United States. The Chosun Shinbo, a pro-North Korea newspaper based in Japan, claimed Wednesday that Pyongyang's recent proposal to Washington should not be taken as a mere charm offensive. Earlier this month, Pyongyang proposed to temporarily suspend its nuclear tests if Washington canceled its joint military drills with Seoul. That proposal was flatly rejected by the U.S. The paper said North Korea does not want talks for talk's sake, but to make serious progress in their dialogue. To do that, it said the two sides must come to the negotiating table without any military threats. But on the same day, in a separate paper, North Korea made more threats directed at the U.S. Through the state-run Nodongshinmun newspaper, Pyongyang said it will launch defensive counteractions if Seoul and Washington conduct joint drills in March as planned. The paper urged the U.S. to halt its rehearsal for an invasion, calling it a key precondition to easing inter-Korean tensions. While Pyongyang seems to be testing the waters with Washington, some analysts say a bilateral meeting between the two Koreas could open a path to engagement. But that would have to come after North Korea gave a much-awaited response to South Korea's offer for talks made last month. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
And now to the latest on a South Korean citizen who went missing in Turkey. Authorities say there's a good chance the teenager voluntarily crossed the border into Syria, but they couldn't find enough evidence to confirm suspicions that he may have joined the Islamic State militant group. Our Kwon So-ah has more.
It's been more than 10 days since a young Korean man, known only by his surname Kim, went missing in Turkey. But there's growing speculation that he may somehow be linked to the Islamic State. On Wednesday, the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency announced the results of its preliminary investigation into the disappearance, saying the 18-year-old crossed the border into Syria voluntarily. Police say there is a low chance that he was forced or kidnapped. They have not found any evidence that he is involved in the militant group, only clues of his interest. Investigators restored Kim's computer and found that as of January last year, many of Kim's key search words were related to the Islamic State. He also expressed his interest in IS on social networking services. Local Korean news channel YTN reported that Kim had left a message for his family before embarking on his trip, which says joined IS. Although grammatically incorrect, it suggests he was telling his parents he was going to join the group. The 18-year-old's whereabouts are still unknown following his disappearance on January 10th from the Turkish border city of Kilis. If he is found to have joined the Islamic State, he will be the first known Korean to have done so. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Japan raised the ire of Korea by once again assigning Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island as its own, but this time Tokyo made the claim for the first time in its Korean language version of Japan's 2014 defense report. On Wednesday, South Korea's defense ministry summoned an envoy from the Japanese embassy and demanded that this never happens again. But the ministry itself is under fire for not responding fast enough, as it was revealed that the defense report was delivered 5 days ago. Japan has claimed Dokdo in its Japanese language defense report since 2005.
We've looked at how Korea is gearing up to be a breeding ground for startups in 2 previous reports in our 5-part series this week. Now, our 3rd report turns to the funding environment that many say still has a long way to go. Hwang Jie tells us more.
Facebook 8, Google 35. That's the number of startups the 2 U.S. tech giants bought last year alone. Korea's Samsung Electronics, less than 1 startup a year on average over the past decade. The head of an association of angel investors says Korean conglomerates instead focus on recruiting engineers with innovative ideas from either suppliers or rival companies.
We have yet to build up a corporate culture that actively embraces M&As, which rewards startups with attractive valuations.
And the corporate practices, experts say, make it hard for venture capitals to thrive in Korea, as M&A deals are the best way for angel investors to make big bucks. While such incentives encourage investors to seek opportunities to turn innovative ideas into lucrative businesses, the lack of them has limited the growth of the pool of venture capital. It stood at roughly $2.3 billion last year, little changed from $2 billion 3 years ago. Building up startup success stories is also critical.
In Korea, there aren't many successful angel funds out there. This is because so many investors got their fingers burnt in the wake of the dot-com crash in the early 2000s.
To achieve the government's goal of making startups Korea's next growth engine, experts say educational reform is vital. Many critics say the Korean educational system's emphasis on rote memory and discipline stifles creativity and entrepreneurial spirit. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Quitting smoking has been a perennial New Year's resolution, but for many Koreans, the higher prices for cigarettes that also kicked in at the start of the new year may give smokers that extra nudge to knock the habit for good. Our Kim Min-ji tells us about some of the strategies they're using.
With prices up and fewer places to light up, many smokers in Korea have made resolutions to quit smoking this year, or cut down at least. Kim Ji-mo, who has been smoking for 8 years, is one of them. To get started, he sought the help of a tobacco cessation clinic.
Well, the tax increase came quite suddenly, and smokers like myself didn't have time to adjust. And I am being really forced to quit smoking.
Tobacco cessation clinics nationwide have seen a surge in visitors this year, and specialists are apparently too busy to sit down for an interview. Health Ministry data shows that more than 100,000 people registered for smoking cessation programs as of last week, up 4 times from a year ago. Those who sign up visit a clinic for about 6 months and undergo counseling. Others are exploring a range of alternatives.
The market for products that help smokers kick the habit, such as this nicotine-free inhaler or chewing gum, is expected to get a boost from cigarette price hike this year.
Sales of e-cigarettes, for one, have been booming since the start of the year.
I've seen sales jump about 3 to 4 times. Sometimes I get so many phone inquiries that I can't attend to the customers that visit.
E-cigarettes have become popular for both the variety of flavors and as a way to cut down or quit gradually.
Before turning to e-cigarettes, I smoked for about 20 years. I changed because it's cheaper in the long run, and there is no smell, so I can freely interact with others.
Other smoking cessation products such as patches and inhalers also saw a sharp increase in sales during the first 2 weeks of January from a year ago. The first month of the year is normally a time when sales of such products jump, but with the higher prices here to stay for good, the market is likely to get bigger. Whether the craze will lead to an overall decrease in the smoking rate, which the government hopes to see decline to 35% from the current 42%, is something only time will tell. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
U.S. President Barack Obama has vowed to improve the lives of working-class Americans in this year's State of the Union address in Washington.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, Obama used this opportunity to talk about counterterrorism, foreign diplomacy, and climate change. But what else did he focus on in his speech?
Well, during his much-anticipated address on Tuesday, Obama laid out his policy direction for his remaining 2 years in office. He urged Congress to pass $320 billion in tax hikes for the rich, which will go towards better wages, health care, and education for low and middle-class families. This as he declared that America was turning the page on years of war and economic recession. Our Son Jung-in has the details.
U.S. President Barack Obama used his annual State of the Union address to turn the page from an era of terror and recession to one of expanding economic opportunity. Emphasizing that the country's economy is growing and creating jobs at the fastest pace since 1999, he started his speech by calling on Congress to join him in enacting his so-called middle-class economics policy. He pledged to help middle-class families afford child care, college, and health care by collecting more tax from high-income earners and large financial institutions. Speaking to a room full of more Republicans than Democrats for the first time during his term, he said helping hard-working families make ends meet will lead to a stronger economy in the years to come. Obama also discussed the foreign policy issues.
We stand united with people around the world who've been targeted by terrorists, from a school in Pakistan to the streets of Paris. We will continue to hunt down terrorists and dismantle their networks, and we reserve the right to act unilaterally, as we have done relentlessly since I took office, to take out terrorists who pose a direct threat to us and our allies.
Stressing that his first duty as commander-in-chief is to defend the country, he asked Congress to pass legislation granting him authorization to fund the ongoing battle against the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. He also addressed efforts to eradicate Ebola in West Africa and plans to normalize relations with Cuba. In addition, he urged Congress to pass new cybersecurity legislation in the wake of the cyber attack on Sony Pictures, which the administration blames on North Korea. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Shifting to Europe, the world's top political and business leaders have gathered for the World Economic Forum in the Swiss city of Davos. The annual forum kicks off on this Wednesday with global economic challenges topping the agenda, as well as the growing threat of violence from radical Islamists. Our Song Ji-sun tells us more.
This year's World Economic Forum annual meeting is being held against a backdrop of multiple challenges to the global economy. Financial uncertainties, regional conflicts, and the uneven global economic recovery will be weighing on the minds of those flying into Davos. Some 40 heads of state, including German Chancellor Angela Merkel, French President François Hollande, and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang and 2,500 other business and society leaders will flock in to discuss the new global context. The challenges include the resolution of geopolitical crises in the wake of conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East and the rise of Islamic State. The program also includes discussions on pandemics and health after Ebola took the lives of several thousand West Africans and some Western aid workers.
We have to deal with the issues to foster the growth on a global level. We have to deal with the challenges we see on the geopolitical level, for example, in Europe. in the Eurozone, but as well as the crisis in the Ukraine. We've also to deal with the Middle East issues, IS, Middle East, terrorism in North Africa.
On the opening day, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang will give a keynote speech on China's growth. That's one to keep an eye on, as it marks the first appearance by a Chinese leader in Davos in 6 years. IMF Chief Christine Lagarde and other economists will discuss the results of quantitative easing on the second day, and on the last day of the forum, look out for the forum's global economic outlook and 2015 agenda. South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se will give a speech on Seoul's unification policy, titled Unified Korea, Infinite Possibilities, on Thursday's Korea Night. Yoon will lay out Seoul's vision for unification, as this year marks the 70th anniversary of inter-Korean division. 송지선, Arirang News.
And turning to Southeast Asia, officials in Indonesia say the ill-fated AirAsia Flight 8501 climbed at unusually high speeds in its final moments before crashing into the Java Sea late last month. Citing radar data, the Transport Minister Ignatius Jonan told a parliamentary hearing on Tuesday that the pilot requested permission to fly at a higher elevation to avoid big storm clouds while cruising at around 33,000 feet. The Airbus then sharply ascended at 2,000 meters per minute, or roughly 500 meters within 6 seconds, a speed faster than a fighter jet would climb. Investigators are still analyzing data from the recovered black box recorders to support this latest theory that the plane stalled in mid-air. Meanwhile, Indonesian search teams are preparing equipment to retrieve the fuselage of the AirAsia jetliner, which lies at the bottom of the sea. Officials said Wednesday that bad weather was hampering the recovery efforts. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hi, I'm Stephen Cheb with the Sports Brief. Reaching the Asian Cup quarterfinals for the 6th time since 1996, will South Korea will be able to lift the title again after 55 years? Uzbekistan stands as the next hurdle. With 3 victories from the group stage, South Korea is confident of a win against Uzbekistan in their upcoming round of 8 matchup. Manager Uli Stilica says South Korea's hopes lie in Son Heung-min's ability to create shots on goal for himself and his teammates. On the flip side, 2-time Asian Footballer of the Year, Server Zheparov's K-League experience may be a leg up for the Uzbek side. Kickoff will be in Melbourne at 4:30 p.m. Korea time Thursday. And heading to the KBL doubleheader, let's start with the tip-off in Incheon. The ET Land Elephants hosted the Dongbu Promi, and it was a tight contest throughout, but Anthony Richardson sank the basket at the buzzer, giving Dongbu the win. Meanwhile, in Seoul, the Samsung Thunders faced Anyang KGC. The Thunders can't stop Oh Se-gun and Leon Williams in the paint. The big men lead KGC to their 2nd win this week. And over to pro volleyball, there were 2 matches in Suwon, starting with the ladies. The Hyundai ENC Hill State went up against the IBK Altos. Going in with 3 straight losses, the Hill State fought for a turnaround, and thanks to Hwang Hyun-ju, they did it in 4 sets. Meanwhile, to the men, as the KEPCO Big Storm squared up with the Hyundai Capital Skywalkers. Despite having lost the first set, KEPCO fought back for 3 straight and the win. Ending off, the details of Kang Jung-ho's 4-year, $11 million contract with the Pittsburgh Pirates have emerged. The Associated Press reported that Kang's base salary starts at $2.5 million this year, and that the 27-year-old will have a chance to add up to $750,000 a year if he reaches 600 plate appearances. Also, the Pirates have agreed to release Kang as a free agent when the deal ends. And that's all I have for now. Your weather's up next. Have a good night.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather outlook. make sure to grab an umbrella on your ways out as a mix of snow and showers are falling down south and in parts of Gyeonggi-do province. So through tomorrow, most inland regions are looking at about 1 to 5 centimeters of snowfall, while showers will hit both Chungcheong-do provinces, and southern regions will get about 5 to 10 millimeters of precipitation. These conditions will affect most areas except Seoul and northern Gyeonggi-do province, and the system will mostly clear up by tomorrow morning. Other than that, numbers should continue to stay in the seasonal average range. On to Thursday's readings. Seoul mixed it to 7, while snowy Daegu and Gwangju hit 6. On to other regions. Jeju should reach a high of 7, Dokdo hit 6, Mount Kumgang -5. That'll do it for now. More updates coming up after midnight.
Thank you very much, Po-kyung. And that's Primetime News for this Wednesday. I am Kang Tae-ri. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Sean Lim. Have a great evening. We'll see you soon.